So, one, two, three, go. Hi, friends, and welcome back to Lumpia Bytes, your hot and crispy conversation on the future of work in the age of AI. Today, we're serving up something fresh from the cloud, like literally fresh from the cloud. We're talking about cloud tech, AI, and everything in between, straight from the floor of the AWS Summit in New York City. Whether you're an AWS pro or you're simply curious on how cloud and AI will shape the future of work, you're in the right place. And today, I'm excited because I'm joined by my co-founder and my very first team lead, our fearless leader, my podcast partner, Luigi, or better known as Fearless Foosh. Isn't just a brilliant technologist, he's actually one of the people that I've learned the most in my career, especially when I was just starting in my career. Someone who has shaped the way I think about tech, leadership, people, and the future of work, and doing things the right way even when no one is looking. So, without further ado, here is my podcast partner, Luigi, better known as Fush, and let's get into it.
Yes.
Hi, Fush!
Hello. Wow, grabe yung intro, wild. Parang
Hi,
feel like,
Fush!
feel like I'm gonna guess into like a big podcast.
Nice,
But
nice, nice. All right.
anyway,
Push, wanted to ask first, how are you and have you recovered from the activities and the events that you've gone to in New York?
yeah. So I attended that AWS Summit and recovered. I think so. But yesterday I was just back there. I was in another conference. It's about AI agents. So I guess the energy in New York is really not changing. So it's always consistent, really upbeat. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, today we're going to be talking about the event that you went to, what you learned, your key takeaways there. But
Mhm.
before we jump into your key takeaways, wanted to ask, how did you first heard about the AWS Summit? For our listeners who might not know, you might also want to give context on what exactly is AWS and why should they care? Because Amazon is famous, but not a lot of people know.
Mhm.
People in tech know about AWS, but people outside of tech may not have the same appreciation for AWS.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Actually, I've been actively looking for tech and AI events like this. It's happening in New York or the East Coast. And I'm always on the lookout for meetups, networking, where we can learn the latest on AI space. And really, the part of the goal is to bring those realizations like, back to our audience, especially Filipino Americans here or Filipinos back home in the Philippines, for them to see what's happening here in the US, where a lot of research and developments are happening, right? And for the folks in the Philippines, it's actually a good way to stay ahead on what could soon reach their market. So when I came across AWS Summit, I thought this is exactly the kind of event that we need to be part of. It's 100% free, which is very rare for a tech conference of this size. And it's just happening here in New York. So I figured, why not go for it? So the vlog, by the way, the vlog wasn't part of the original plan, but I thought it would be helpful for those who wants to see real action, right? The footages and what they can witness on events like this. It was my first vlog ever in my entire life, I guess. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out in our channel. So what's AWS, right? So it stands for Amazon Web Services. So it's not the Amazon shopping that we know. Remember much when we used to work in Hewlett Packard? Where do you work? HP. Oh, I have a problem on my printer. Do you go? We're gonna get a good ink, cheap ink. Okay. So it's not the HP devices, it's not the hardware, but we're more in the enterprises. So Amazon is similar. So AWS is not the shopping, it's the technology backbone, the cloud computing arm that powers a lot of businesses in today's world. So basically, they're a tech company that offers storage, infrastructure, tools, and now a lot of focus on building generative AI. Great example here for those who doesn't know AWS is Netflix, for example. All the shows and the movies that you stream, it's there in Netflix, and a lot of those data are actually stored through AWS data centers. It's a complete tech stack, basically. Whatever you need to build technology and application, probably AWS has it.
Yep. They're pretty big and pretty huge in the world of tech. So,
Mhm.
Fush, who do you think in amongst our listeners, there are people who are technical and there are people who are non-technical. Who do you think would benefit the most from knowing things about AWS?
Oh, good question. Actually, anyone who's in tech or anyone who's trying to be in tech can benefit learning AWS, right? And also conferences like this, the AWS Summit that I attended, whether you're in the entrepreneurship side, whether you're in the management side, or technical, not technical, there's something in there for you. I actually met a guy there. He's a founder of this nonprofit organization, and then a lot of partners in there, right? People who work on other tech companies who's partnering with Amazon. So I guess learning AWS, whether you're just starting in tech, it's also a good opportunity because they have the full tech stack, right? So if you try to master their language, their business, their portfolio, you can be like specialized on this specific tech stack, so you'll be in good place. And for someone who's already in tech as well, at some point for sure you're going to be using one of their tools, one of their application services, so it's a good way of learning it. So actually everyone, like almost everyone, can benefit.
Yep, perfect, Fush. So, to the folks there, entry level technology folks who are not really who knows about AWS at least in a surface level or but doesn't really dive deep into what AWS is. This is actually a good chance to dive deep into the world of AWS, how big it is. It's pretty much running a good portion of the internet. And for those folks who are not too technical, just think of it as the world's biggest toolbox that the world's technology is running on. And these are actually web services that you could kind of pay per use. And instead of you capitalizing on all of those equipment, you could actually just use AWS services. So they're the biggest when it comes to this. And I'm so excited to hear about your event and activities in the AWS Summit. So, what were your top key takeaways for the event that you just attended?
Yep. I think that's really the most important part of this episode. After I attended that event, I can't wait to discuss this with you. I'm open to feedback, right? And another new perspective. And I actually put up a slide as well. So I don't want to miss a single detail because I think there's so much in there. It's really good information that I wanted to share to our audience. There we go. Yeah. So here's my first key takeaway. I put up a visual here that I generated using AI. It took me a number of iterations, to be honest, to get into this, and I still ended up putting the text. Sometimes it's wrong spelling, sometimes it's not. But anyway, the point here, if you look at this image, AI is like a race right now, right? A lot of companies, whether big or small, they're racing towards AI. And really in that race, it's someone who has strong data foundation will win the race, right? So if you look at the stats here, 89% of the companies are moving forward with Gen AI. All right, let's go for it, right? It's 89%. But over 50% of them admit that their data foundations are not ready. So there's like an irony in there. So you'll see probably leaders that, okay, we don't have the right data foundations, but let's just go, right? Let's take the risk. And then probably they're thinking, just fix these things along the way, right? But what's happening there is their Gen AI is not working because they don't have a strong data foundation. So that's key takeaway number one. So what does strong data foundation means? And which, if you look at this, these are actually not new, right? Coming from a data warehousing, big data background, these are all the same. You have to have trusted data sources, a unified data architecture, smooth ingestion, integration, reliability, and pre-processing and processing. And data governance on top of it. But it's just that two things that stuck on me is one, it has to be optimized for AI now, and second is it has to be interoperable. It's interconnection because now you have AI solutions, AI application that has to talk with other AI systems as well. In the summit, I heard a lot. It's all about agents and agentic AI. So there's two terms that you can see everywhere in there: AI agents and agentic AI. So, what is the real problem if people focus more on the AI models? There is this really nice tagline that one of the speakers shared in one of the sessions that I attended. It's no artificial intelligence without information architecture. So it's because it's all starts with data, right? Everything is about data. So you have to make sure that your information architecture is stable before you do AI. And AI doesn't just need more data. It needs clean data, connected data, and control data. Every time a company has a problem of deploying, not being able to scale, and a lot of times they say, you don't have an AI problem, you have a data foundation problem. So this is good stuff that I learned from the summit. And without strong data foundation, what's gonna cost you, right? It's basically the classic. We always hear this one ever since: garbage in, garbage out, right? Your AI could hallucinate. Your AI could provide bias outputs. You have innovation bottlenecks, higher costs, and all these things. But I guess the bottom line here is only 36% of organizations have successfully deployed AI to production. It's really because they don't have a strong data foundation.
Wow, wow, Push. I learned so much there. That is exactly what people need to know. Just a quick background for all the folks who's just joining in this episode. Push and I actually came from a data warehousing, data analytics, data background. So a good portion and a good chunk of our professional experience actually was working with data and making sure that systems were churning out correct and accurate data with high data quality. That's really the discipline of people who've worked in data. That's what's showing right now with all of your key takeaways. And I just realized when I was listening to you that a lot of people right now, the base knowledge or the base level of acceptable intelligence is becoming ChatGPT. So meaning ChatGPT is now a level playing field for everyone. It's becoming the basic level of intelligence that's acceptable for us. But not everybody will be using it the same way because each of us have different sources of data and what we input it with and how that data is prepared and how that data is processed and analyzed will significantly uh, kind of differentiate the result that it generates. Is that what you're saying, Fush?
I think what's going to happen is these companies, they're going to provide you the tools, but it's still up to you on the products are going to be building. You're just going to be basically using these tools and services, but it's up to you to define, right? What's your standards on your data? What's your governance standards, right? What's your mission and vision of your AI application? So like what you said, ChatGPT is becoming like a general tool right now for everyone. But there's a lot of things that you can control in there, right? When providing your own AI application. And I actually found out as well, the feedback that you give to ChatGPT, the thumbs up, thumbs down. There's even a specific tool that can capture that feedback because they put it back to the model, to improve the context behind the personalization. So there's a lot of things going on in the backend within terms of data that I think there's going to be a lot of tools and applications emerging for you to be able to personalize, right? To be able to customize what you want to deliver for the client. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. I also saw in your key takeaways that you said garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're from a data discipline, that's like basic common sense for us. But can you expound on that in a way that explains the quality of the output will rely on the quality of the input? I guess when you say garbage in, garbage out, it also kind of means that a scientist using ChatGPT will have totally different results and quality of output compared to a mediocre person, for example, that's just using ChatGPT to cut and paste the work of ChatGPT and claiming it as their own. So a genius level scientist using ChatGPT might have a or will have a totally different output compared to somebody who's just prompting it for work and calling it their own. Is that what you're saying, right? With
That's
garbage in, garbage out?
Yeah, that's one thing. That's one thing. That's actually a good perspective because when you're prompting, right? If your prompt is weak, not too detailed specific, then the result that you're gonna get from your AI is going to be like not as what you want. It's kind of garbage sometimes, right? That's one way of seeing it from a consumer standpoint, but also from a technology provider standpoint. If the data that you loaded to train the models or just the raw data that you have are inaccurate data, like garbage data, then what would you expect to be the output of that? Right? It's also not aligned with the accuracy standards that you wanted to achieve. So it could come from both two worlds, the customer side, the consumer side, in terms of prompting the AI, and also from the implementation side, which is the building of that model. If you train your AI with some garbage and or biased data, what would you expect the output to be? It's also going to be the same.
Exactly. And you could also say that if your data sources are limited, or again with bias and limitation, you need to be able to understand your data. So actually, Fush, what you're saying right now and what I'm getting at is that having a data discipline is actually a prerequisite to using AI as a competitive advantage. Correct?
100%.
Because it seems like if you use AI, every one of us will have access to AI and ChatGPT. Every one of us will be prompting, probably, like most of us will be. But not everyone will of us will have a good data discipline. And if you do have a data discipline, then it will be your competitive advantage as we all use this basic tool, but not all of us will have that information architecture training or the skill
Mhm.
to make sure that we're getting unbiased data, we're getting quality data, and we're getting data from multiple sources and factoring that in on how we prompt and process the data. So for key takeaway one, I guess something actionable for our audience here is that if you're listening now, it's a good time to sharpen your data discipline. It's a good time to read up on information architecture to make sure that you're using ChatGPT in the way that the 0.1% of users would be using it. So you don't want to use ChatGPT like the 99.9% of how people use it, which is they just prompt and expect ChatGPT to generate an output. Probability would suggest that if billions of people are already using ChatGPT, then there would be similarities in the output. But the factors that would make the output unique or even more valuable would be the quality of your data, the the variety of your data, and your prompting. So thanks for that, Fush. Apart from the data quality, what do you think is the second big theme or key takeaway that you got from the AWS Summit?
Yep. Let me share my screen again. So I have another visual here that I prompted using using Gen AI. But second key takeaway is it's only through responsible AI and data governance where we can move from early adoption to majority adoption. So think about responsible AI and governance is like a bridge towards the next stage of AI, right? Because right now we've been using ChatGPT. A lot of companies already adapted with AI, but we're still really not into that majority adoption. But almost there, but I think it's really that responsible AI and trust, right, that needs to be built. So if you look at the stats here, 77% of executives believe that the true benefits of AI will only be achieved if it's built on the foundation of trust, right? 66% of them identify data privacy and security as top AI risk. So this is actually promising numbers because leaders, right, they know that data governance, the trust on the AI system is critical. And I guess for our viewers, what is responsible AI? Before attending the summit, I know that governance, right? It's about the security, the data privacy, the ethics, I guess the basic ones that we know. But AWS actually has this different dimensions about responsible AI. And these are the different dimensions that they have a lot. It's actually public data. You can look at it in the AWS website, right? But this is how they kind of define the responsible AI. So, fairness, for example, your AI application has to be fair, meaning when you train them, that it look at different work groups, right? Stakeholders, and not just focus on one group of people, right? Explainability, for example, that every time an AI outputs something, that you should be able to explain, right, how it got that result, how it got to that information. Sometimes in ChatGPT, if you do research, deep research, you'll see that, oh, it's thinking, it's kind of laying out to you where it's getting the information or the traceability aspect of it. So that's explainability. And then you talk about privacy and security, the basic ones, safety, controllability, right? Governance, the policies that you set up for your AI systems, and the transparency. Right? But one thing that's really it's stuck on me in here is controllability. We've already probably have heard some news that AI could go rogue, right? Where AI learn from itself and it cannot be controlled by the master anymore. So controllability is important. You should be able to control your AI regardless of what happens. And those are the guardrails that you have to set up, right? I know this is a lot of theories, right? And to be honest, when you talk about governance, it's not the most exciting one. Right? It's not building, it's not innovating. But I want to give a concrete example here on how they do governance. So for example, how do you increase fairness on your application, right? So, and this is how they do it. First, they perform risk assessment. And even Amazon has their own tools on doing risk assessments. You conduct regular bias audits. You regularly test your AI models because these mod AI, they learn. They're not preset rules, so their answers can change in time. So that's why it's important for you to conduct a regular bias audits and a regular test on those models. Also, you audit the training data so to make sure it's aligned with your standards. And the most important one, I think, for me is ensure human oversight, because there's a lot of automation around data governance for sure. You're gonna have all the AI agents as well checking whether is this system is fair, the system is biased or not. But it's still important there's a human in there who will kind of oversee everything, right? And you also fine tune it for diversity. So this is like a concrete example on how you can increase fairness and how you can align your application towards a responsible AI application. And so what's the cost of no governance? So earlier, what's the cost of no data foundations? It's garbage in, garbage out. And for no governance, and these are the possible risks: bias and unfair outcomes, hallucinations, losing customer trust, the brand damage and the public backlash. It could be legal risk as well. And the most important thing here is the loss of business value. A lot of companies, OpenAI, right? These are businesses, and they don't want to damage their brand. They don't want to lose their business value. That's why governance, the trust is very important.
Great point, Fush. Before we go to key takeaway 3, you said that governance is not the most exciting topic. True, to some extent, but I would say that it is the most important topic,
Mhm.
for the sole reason that if there are founders and CEOs and business leaders listening to this podcast right now, my question is, since AI relies on garbage in, garbage out, which basically means that AI relies on the quality and the freshness of the data that it's being fed on. My question is, what will happen if you have low data quality, right? So if your data quality is low, then the output would be inaccurate, or not
Mhm.
inaccurate, but not optimized to the best of its ability, right? And what happens if there's a data leak? Suddenly, you have this artificial intelligence that has access to your proprietary data, and anyone in your organization can access it
Mhm.
and can ask it to access more data. So, the lack of governance suddenly becomes your biggest risk, actually.
Mhm.
Is that
Mhm.
what you're saying, Fush?
Yep, 100%. It's going to backfire if you don't have governance. And actually, Much, these data governance, this is not something that you should do at the end when you're about to move to production. Right? This is something that you have to think about at the early stage when you're building the product. My previous work actually we're part of the compliance and risk management team where we build solutions for healthcare companies, right, to make them more compliant, to make them more transparent. And these systems, we build them at the early stages, right? These checkpoints, the flags, the rules, the standards, you build them earlier and not down the road. So what's happening now is you could go to production fine, right? But when it backfired, you're just gonna go back to the drawing board, and you will notice, oh, I have to change this in my application. Oh, I have to do these changes, and those are gonna be costly changes because you already have a thing in production. Now you're gonna change almost everything. You know what I mean? So this is something that you have to think about the early stages when building something.
Super great point, Fush. Also, what I realized is that a lot of CEOs and founders are actually listening to this podcast. And a lot of them are using ChatGPT now. So I guess we could also ask them, are your employees using ChatGPT? And do you have an enterprise account of ChatGPT? Because if you don't have a data governance policy, even enterprise wide or company wide, how do you know where your data is going, where your reports are going? Are
Yeah.
these going to the personal ChatGPT accounts of your employees? Or are they going to your enterprise accounts of your employees? Because I mean, I just realized when you were talking, Fush, that this is a huge if you don't have governance over your data, over your company's proprietary data, then corporate espionage nowadays is going to be so easy because it's literally just uploading a CSV file to a
Yeah.
browser and you can already save that and process that with ChatGPT. Eh, what will happen to companies if they don't have policies and regulations in place,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. And I think because this AI revolution is really going so fast, right? It's like an AI race, and people tend to overlook these things, data foundations, governance. But when you get to production, and when we get to instances where the hacks, the leaks are now becoming very common, then you're gonna realize how important these things are, right? And like what I've said earlier, if you go back to the drawing board again, this is going to cost you more. So it's important to think about this earlier.
Before we move to the next key takeaway, what are your final thoughts for CEOs and founders leading with AI now to keep their company safe?
I think first, if your company is using those AI tools, um, read the data privacy, the notice, right? There's this legal and privacy terms and agreements in there. I think it's very important to understand that, like what you said, where are you using them on a personal account or enterprise account? And a lot of these companies right now, they're using all these AI powered tools for their employees, so they have to understand the data privacy terms of those application. And second, if you're the one in the building mode, I'd say if you're building an AI solution, try to think about how are you gonna design or implement your data governance, right? The responsible AI dimensions that I showed earlier, that's actually a good guide. Just think about how are you supporting those different dimensions and how are you gonna implement it as well? How are you gonna take action on those, right?
Great. Thanks, Fush. That's so helpful. as a business owner, it's so important to really think about data governance because sometimes, as you said earlier, it's the last thing that we think about. We don't think, nobody wants to think about policing things at the start of a project, right? That's like a turn off. But it's so important that we have somebody in our organization being responsible, being the police in our society or in our organization to make sure that everything that we're doing with our data within our company and even outside our company is actually safe. And just some simple questions to leave CEOs before we move to the next topic, CEOs, founders, or even the regular Joe or the regular who's using ChatGPT. First, ask yourself, who owns the data? Who owns the data? What is the data life cycle? What is your right for data deletion? And what is your right for data transfers? So just think about those questions. Who owns the data and what happens to the data even after we either leave a company or we die? Because I think for a lot of personal ChatGPT users, and this is what I'm really scared about too right now, they're using it as their therapist and they're asking it very private questions. So what happens to that data when you either leave a company or you leave this earth? Something to think about.
Yep.
And yeah, anything to add, Fush?
Sam Altman, right, recently mentioned this about the data privacy of ChatGPT. That if there's not really a clear right boundaries in there, that to the point that if you get sued, for example, they might ask ChatGPT, OpenAI, oh, I need the information for this person. You know what I mean? So that's why it's important to understand the terms and agreements of these applications before you give all your personal information in there.
Great point, Fush, because I think in in court cases, they've actually been able to subpoena conversations.
Mhm.
And if ChatGPT is a conversation, then technically, if something were to happen, then they could also
Mhm.
subpoena your conversations with ChatGPT. I guess the only
Mhm.
difference is that your conversations with ChatGPT would probably have things that you might not ask other humans, which is more
Mhm.
private in nature, which is scary. So, who owns the data? If ChatGPT is attached to your brain and has that kind of like that private and intimate space that you would process your thoughts in, that's really scary to know who owns that data because pretty much they own a part of your stream of consciousness.
Yep. Mhm.
So to those people who think that governance is boring or responsible AI is boring, just think, who owns your stream of consciousness now?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier, Mooch, about how do you feel if you're getting policed, right? Because these data governance people, they're like acting as a police in the company, technically, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I used to work in the compliance world. Every time we go to enterprises, to clients, you'll see that the business users are not thrilled with these guys, right? I mean, let's face it. I mean, these are the ones who wants us to do more processes, to do more checks, to do more reviews, right? And also, they don't feel, I'd say, the return, because if nothing happens, if you're compliant, it's just normal life. But you feel the return when something failed and you get fined for like $1 billion your company because you don't have these governance, you don't have these compliance and transparency foundations in there.
Great point, Fush. And what I'm getting is that governance is pretty much the insurance of the AI space.
Mm.
And nobody likes paying for insurance,
Mhm.
but we sure do want it to be there when we need it.
Yeah, it's exactly, yeah, just like insurance. I think there will be a point where these things, especially governance, is probably not going to be optional anymore because this technology has been evolving. The regulations, the legal aspect of it is going to be evolving. It's going to catch up soon, right? And my prediction is just my opinion. We will get to the point where the regulations, compliance, transparency reporting, on AI will be similar to what we have in finance and healthcare. You know, these financial institutions, healthcare institutions, they have a lot of audits, they have a lot of transparency reporting that they submit to the government, right? The state and federal. I think there's going to be a point where AI applications will be required to achieve that level of transparency and standards in terms of governance. Why? Because these AI systems will be critical part of our life eventually.
Great point, Fush. Because I think a lot of users right now are just self-governing. And we could generalize that there might be two groups of users or two groups of operators, AI operators, that there would be abusers, people who would abuse their access to data, abuse their systems, you know, probably abuse their access to customer data. But there would be this other group that's accountable. And at the end of the day, whether you're abusing it right now, the laws, the legislation, the governance will catch up. So I guess the key takeaway there is set it up now responsibly, even when no one is looking. Do it right, the right way at the start so that you won't have to play catch up in doing all of that when the legislation, when the regulations start to come eventually, right? With all this talk about governance, you're making me scared and fearful about playing with AI because it's still really an experimental field. But I guess that's a great segue to your third key takeaway, right?
Yep. Let me share my screen. So my third key takeaway, another visual from AI, but this is really more of there's a guy there in the summit who calls this the Gen AI whiplash. Because every now and then you'll see, oh, a product updates in here. Oh, there's a new tool available in here. Oh, there's layoffs in here. Oh, there's restructuring going on. There's so much going on. Basically, my key takeaway is, the fear is real. Fear is real. I get to meet people where one, they're afraid of getting laid off. They're afraid of that they're falling behind, that they don't know where they fit anymore. So these are the top three fears that I'm hearing. And especially for people who work in big tech, for example, it's not that AI is replacing humans, but the companies are restructuring to align, right, their priorities with AI, which will involve laying off people. So it's not directly replacing humans, but they're restructuring that's causing a lot of layoffs. By the way, I posted this in our LinkedIn page. So if you guys are not following our LinkedIn page yet, go to this link here and you'll see this. We recently posted it. And we also posted here on how to respond to this fear, right? I think this is the most important one is one, if you're afraid of getting laid off, become AI literate, right? If you're AI literate, I'm 100% sure in your next job, there's probably an interview question that they will ask you. What can you do that AI cannot? So focus on those human elements at the same time. Make sure that you can use AI. I can use AI. I can direct AI. That's something that AI cannot do. If they can provide output, but still you're the one directing it. And then this is very common, especially for middle management group, I'd say, because they feel like they're falling behind. So much going on, and they don't have a lot of time to learn AI. Some companies, they're probably giving their employees AI tools, but some, you would be surprised that they're still stuck in the legacy application. You mean someone needs to take care of the legacy ones. And these are the people who feel that, are we falling behind? So advice is start small, but start now. Even if it's just 15 minutes of reading, learning, watching news, watching podcasts, taking short courses. You don't need to be catching up on all the things, but just focus on, like a roadmap, right? Small roadmap that you just follow every day. And then the last one is if you feel like you are not in that circle anymore, meaning your current role, wow, this role is being done by another group right now, because there's a lot of evolution in terms of roles and responsibilities. We mentioned that in the AI world, your job will evolve and you'll be surprised. Oh, this designer is doing data. Oh, this Now this employee is doing coding. So you feel like, okay, where's my place now? So I think just double down on your human skills because if at the end of the day, if you focus on your human skills, you have a place in an AI world.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Great sage advice, Push. And if you guys have any questions, fears, doubts, or hesitations, if we're a CEO or corporate professionals, do type in the comment section so that we could answer in our next podcast episode. Great topics we've been able to cover today, from what AWS actually is. Finally, I would be able to explain what AWS is to my mother. And I think my three biggest key takeaways from you, Fush, is that number one is that no AI works without strong data foundations. So for the podcast listeners right now, sharpen your data foundation, sharpen your data skills. Make sure that you have, in order to create a better quality output from ChatGPT, try to think about what data sources can you ethically and responsibly source and use that to improve your output with ChatGPT. The second is responsible AI is not optional. It should be at the core principles of our personal and professional AI usage, making sure that we self govern ourselves right now while there's no regulation in place, that we self govern, that we shouldn't be copying and pasting personal, private, intimate customer data in ChatGPT, or even our own personal data, keeping our personal data safe. We shouldn't be copying, pasting our credit card information to ChatGPT, right? Making sure that there's fairness and transparency in how we use it, especially if we're submitting work that's done by ChatGPT to our bosses or to
Mhm.
our teachers or professors, right? That we show them how we used it. And the third one is that the fear, the anxiety, and the noise around AI is real, but the way forward is to keep upskilling, keep learning, and stay up to date so that we can become AI literate. We can start small from where we are and focus on the human skills that AI can't replace. Before we wrap up, Fush, I just wanted to ask you one final thing. What's the one personal thing that you think you really changed your mind from attending the AWS Summit, from attending all of these activities in New York, from your exposure in the past? How do you sum up all of that lived experience and intuition into something that's really useful based on what you're learning, based on the new things that you're also learning now?
Mhm. In the summit, I mentioned earlier, I heard a lot about AI agents and agentic AI. And one thing I learned is these AI agents, you can actually build it your own. With the rise of the vibe coding, AI tools available online, the technology is going to be in the hands of everyone. And one realization that I have is this is actually exciting. This is actually an opportunity for you, for us, for everyone to think about what are you going to build, right? What are the things that you wanted to build that will for your work, for probably your home, right? And your other priorities in life. Try to explore, try to build. Eventually I think it's going to be more democratized. Right now, these tools are in the hands of people who are in tech because they can understand how it works, they can easily build it. But eventually, this is going to be in the hands of non tech people. So watch out for that. And that's going to be an exciting world. And I have proven in the summit that there's going to be more builders coming in this AI world. And going back to our discussion today, build responsibly, build something that will benefit the human being and not something for the bad, because you can actually use these tools as well for negative stuff, but focus on building something that that will be for the good of humanity.
Woo-hoo!
All right, good.
Perfect. Perfect closing, Fush. Perfect closing. Thanks, Fush, for that. What are you going to build if you if our audience can take something from our podcast right now, that's the question. What are you going to build? And it's actually a great segue to our next episode where we talk about my trip in Silicon Valley. So currently, right now, we're actually shooting this podcast. I'm in Silicon Valley. I'm here in the Bay Area. We've like a 3 day trip that extended. Right now, I'm on my third week here in the Bay Area because just a teaser for the next episode. Here in Silicon Valley, people aren't asking, what do you know about AI? People are asking, what are you building with AI? So you can't go here without doing your homework because people here are building. And the value of an idea is no longer unique. It's the value of what you build and how users love it. So without
100%.
further ado, that is on our next episode.
All right.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much, Fush, for all of the key takeaways, for all of the knowledge that you just shared. So, if you guys have questions from Fush or in our next episode, type it in the comment section because we're going to make sure that we tackle that for our next podcast episode. Okay? Thank
Thanks.
you.
Sounds good. Thanks. Thanks, guys. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
guys.